Okay, so let's dive into a pretty fascinating and honestly a little unsettling thought exercise from Citrini research. It's written as if it's a memo sent back from the future, looking at a crisis that completely reshaped the world.
And this, right here, is the central question of the whole thing. It's a complete paradox when you think about it. What if all this incredible, world-changing AI that we're all so excited about, what if it actually turns out to be, well, bearish for the economy?
All right, so let's set the scene. Imagine you're reading a memo from June 2028. You're right in the middle of a full-blown global crisis, and this is the analysis.
The date is June 30th, 2028, and according to this memo, the world, and I quote, no longer resembles the one any of us grew up in.
And boom, here's the first number they hit you with, the unemployment rate, 10.2%. I mean, just imagine that. Just a few years earlier, a number like that would have been completely unthinkable.
And if that wasn't bad enough, here's the second number, a 38% cumulative drop in the S&P 500 from its peak just 2 years prior. So you have to ask, right? How on earth did we get from a booming market to a systemic crisis so fast?
To figure that out, we've got to go back in time. Let's rewind to 2026. On the surface, everything looked amazing. The market was on fire, flirting with all-time highs. But underneath it all, something really weird was going on. And this slide really shows the crazy contradiction that was happening. On one hand, you had soaring stock markets and productivity growth like we hadn't seen in decades, all thanks to AI. But on the other hand, for actual people, for human workers, real wage growth had just, poof, completely collapsed.
So economists came up with this brand new term for it, ghost GDP. And it makes so much sense when you think about it. You've got a giant GPU cluster somewhere, right? And it's doing the work of, say, 10,000 people. That output gets counted in the national numbers. But here's the huge problem. That machine isn't buying a coffee, it's not paying rent, it's not taking its family on vacation. That money, it just wasn't making its way back into the hands of real people.
And this is where things start to get really bad. This is where the whole engine of the crisis just kicks into high gear. See, it wasn't one single event. Nope, it was this nasty feedback loop, a spiral that just started spinning out of control.
Let's just walk through it step by step. First, AI just keeps getting better and smarter. So companies do the logical thing, right? They cut expensive white-collar jobs to save on costs. But here's the thing. All those people who just lost their jobs, well, they stop spending money. And that hurts the revenues of all the companies. So to try and save their profit margins, what do those companies do? You guessed it, they pour even more money into AI to cut even more costs, and you can see how the whole thing just repeats, getting faster and more vicious each time. You see, the really critical thing to understand here is that this was totally different from past tech disruptions. I mean, think about Blockbuster or Kodak. They fought the new tech, they resisted, and they just slowly faded away. This was the opposite. The big established companies didn't fight AI, they couldn't. To survive, they had to embrace it, which meant they were actually speeding up their own disruption, all just to make it through the next quarter.
And this wasn't just a software problem. No way. The problem started to spread, and it began to just tear apart any business that made its money from human inefficiency. Any business built on things being slow or complicated.
This slide just perfectly captures that shift. Look, we're human, right? We get stuck in our habits. We'll pay a little extra for something because we don't want to deal with a few more clicks. We accept it. But AI agents? Oh man, they are absolutely ruthless. They just run in the background 24/7, constantly optimizing, finding the absolute best price for everything, and they never ever get tired.
And you know what that meant? It was basically game over for any industry that was just a middleman. We're talking travel booking, insurance renewals, financial advice, real estate commissions, the whole shebang. All those trillions of dollars that companies made just by taking advantage of friction and complexity, it all just started to evaporate.
So this is the point where the crisis goes from being a problem for a few industries to something much, much scarier. It basically metastasized, becoming a full-blown systemic threat to the entire financial system. And in 2027, the dominoes just started to fall, and boy, did they fall fast. First, you had Moody's downgrading a ton of debt held by private equity-backed software companies. Then, Zendesk, a huge name in software, actually defaulted on a $5 billion loan. Think about why. Because AI agents were now so good at customer service that Zendesk's whole business model was suddenly worthless. And that, as you can imagine,
triggered a massive panic and a market crash.
But here's what made this whole thing so different from a normal recession, and this chart shows it perfectly. The job losses weren't spread out. They were hitting the highest earners the hardest. And get this, the top 20% of earners in the US, they're responsible for almost 2/3 of all consumer spending. So when that group starts losing their jobs, the ripple effect on the economy is just absolutely massive.
And that led to maybe the single most terrifying question of the entire crisis, a question that put the whole $13 trillion foundation of the US mortgage market at risk. See, prime mortgages, the loans we give to people with the best credit, are all based on one simple idea, that these people will keep their high-paying jobs. But what happens when AI starts taking those jobs away? Suddenly, you have to ask, are those safe loans actually safe anymore?
Okay, so that brings us to the very end. The big reveal, this is the crucial pivot where this whole story about the future comes crashing right back into our present day.
Because here's the twist. As the memo explains right at the end, this story, it's not actually set in June 2028.
No, it's a warning, a thought experiment written in February of 2026. This whole thing is a fictional scenario, a cautionary tale about a path we could very well be heading down. It's about a very, very real risk.
So what's the big takeaway here? What are we supposed to learn from this warning? Well, first, AI is completely changing the value of human intelligence. It's making it less scarce. And all our economic models, which are built on that scarcity, are starting to break. But here's the good news, and it's a big one. That scary displacement spiral we talked about, it hasn't really started yet. That means we still have a window. We still have time to do something about it. The canary in the coal mine, it's still singing.
And so that leaves us with the memo's final, very powerful question. The high value, the premium we've always placed on human intelligence, it's unwinding right before our eyes. The old way of doing things is breaking down. So the only question that really matters is, can we build the new frameworks we need before it's too late?